Hey there, everybody. This is Amazing Fantasy Football. I am Josh, and that guy over there is...
And I am Chris.
And Chris he is. How you doing
As he
tonight, Chris?
screams into the microphone. I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk fantasy, excited to get our fans and our listeners the advice that they need, the amazing advice that they need.
The fantastical advice they
No,
need.
definitely amazing, like the show. You
It's
know?
also fantasy. Fantastical.
Oh, good point. Good point.
The footballistic advice they need?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
We're Amazing Fantasy Football, of course, and we are here to talk about some fantasy football. Chris, I believe you have some news. Oh, by the way, I'm doing okay.
How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing just fine.
My first line of my notes, my news notes says, "How are you doing, Josh?"
In your notes?
Do you have a
Your
hip subluxation?
No, thankfully.
Good. James White does. So I have
Sounds
that he's
terrible.
out indefinitely. All signs point to him being out the whole season, but I haven't heard the name, the words IR yet. Those are letters, not words. The letters IR. Second note, oh my God, I can't talk. Josh Gordon, blah, blah, blah. That's what the note says. Moving along. Marlon Mack is seeking a trade. TJ Watt is a full go. He's over his groin injury. Full go in Thursday's practice. Tyler Lockett did not practice Thursday with a hip. DK Metcalf popped up a couple hours ago with a foot injury. He was limited in Thursday's practice. Rashad Bateman for the Ravens, wide receiver, is off the injury report with his groin. He's had back-to-back full practices, apparently. Josh Jacobs
going to play this week.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I don't know if he's literally
off the IR and he is ready to roll.
I don't see why they wouldn't, because I believe Hollywood is banged up, which I don't have here. Forgive me. Maybe that's.
Is it?
I didn't see that. Okay, never mind. Onward. Josh Jacobs is questionable with an ankle for Monday night. Both Julio and AJ Brown for the Titans did not practice Thursday with hamstrings. Same story with the Giants receivers, Shepard and Slayton, both out with hamstrings. Deontay for the Steelers, more wide receiver talk, gets in a full practice with his knee injury. Dalvin Cook, practice limited both Wednesday and Thursday with his sprained right ankle, so signs are looking good for him to go, which is really great for one or two of my fantasy teams. Anyway. Antonio Gibson, this was kind of weird, has a shin. He practiced Wednesday but not Thursday, so that's kind of rare when you're good to go Wednesday.
Does he only have one shin?
Yeah,
you said
apparently
he has
one
didn't. I have two. I've got two.
Apparently one shin didn't show up for Thursday's practice, so they didn't let him practice.
That sounds terrible. How do you walk with that?
Exactly. That's why I didn't practice, Josh. He said he'd bring it on Friday and Sunday, apparently. No. Lamar Jackson did not practice for the second straight day. I feel like the impression I got on Twitter and in injury updates and injury feeds was that it's just, I don't know, I'm not too concerned. They're not too concerned about it at this point. Probably just rest for a guy who likes to run around a lot. MVS, remind me what that guy's name, Marquez Scantlin.
You got her.
Did not practice Thursday for the hamstring. Will Fuller returns to practice for the Dolphins, and Antonio Brown returned to practice. He's off the COVID list for the Buccaneers.
Antonio Brown, the super spreader. No, I'm just joking.
And that's the news, Josh. Back to you.
My first matchup is I have the Tennessee Titans at the New York, whatever. Doesn't matter. It's the Jets, but insert one. I don't know. It's just it's a palette swap essentially. Daniel Jones.
Are the Knicks still really bad? Because that'd be great.
I have no idea. I don't watch basketball, dude. That's your neck of the woods.
I used to.
Nick of the woods, perhaps. Yeah.
Champ at the bit.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty bad. Let's start with Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill had a semi bounce back week last week against my stupid Colts. God, they're so stupid. The Jets are they're only allowing actually 217.3 passing yards. I am maintaining the fact that that like teams are getting up so big so early on the Jets that they aren't having to throw. And this could easily be the case for the Tannehill and the Titans this week. I wrote that down before realizing that Julio Jones was, questionable. And it does. And
For sure.
you didn't really mention it in the injury news, but I saw somewhere, not that it's really all that credible. I'm sorry. I will even quote the source. It is on sportingnews.com that they are thinking that AJ Brown is trending more towards the outside of playing, and Julio is going to be maybe more of a, kind of maybe either he's going to be on, they're talking about load management, or a better phrase would be a snap count for Julio, or he could even just be thrown out there as a decoy while guys like, what's his name? Josh Reynolds or some other guy that I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name. Could be the targets out there. The Jets are bad enough that even Tannehill could kind of threat with these guys, but I'm thinking it's more. I have 3.5 stars, but with this news about AJ Brown and Julio Jones that we've kind of uncovered this evening,
Yeah.
I'm going to mainly lean towards more of like a 2-star, like super flex kind of desperation play.
I was about to say, I don't think taking off a half a star is enough. Just like he should probably be on the outside of the top 12 conversation. Like
he's going. He's a guy going with a bunch of scrubs, at wide receiver position to battle. Oh, I'm sorry, Chester Rogers is also there too, and he's actually did okay last week for him. But still, like it's just
Mr. Tannehill. But if these guys are out, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not starting Ryan Tannehill. Like he had a 3.5 star before, so it wasn't like I was giving him this glowing praise against the Jets anyways. Derrick Henry, though, he is getting 5 stars. Call this lazy analysis or low-hanging fruit or shooting fish in a barrel or throwing glass houses for people who live in rocks. But, you've seen that commercial where Derrick Henry is dragging guys behind it, like everywhere while he's running, like on the treadmill, through the mall, whatever. Well, he may just do that this week with the Jets. The Jets are giving up 23.1 fantasy points to opposing running backs. So 5 stars for Derrick Henry, who I believe is the RB1 in fantasy football right now. Half PPR scoring, of course. Let's keep moving. Like I said, I kind of talked about the receivers already. I had Julio with a 3-star rating. I'm kind of bumping him down to more of like a 2-star and a bench if he's like with even worse news potentially coming out. Having said all that, stay tuned or tune in for our Sunday stream, which we do injury news, we do the Monday night matchup, we do last minute fantasy advice, which you can type into the chat. People like to stop in and do that. So yeah, check Chris and I out for that. It's every Sunday morning starting at 10 a.m. Central Time. We don't know where you live, so you have to do that math. The Jets players, I'm benching a lot of them, man. The Titans may be giving up. I have 2,100 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position, but I believe that is supposed to be 21.3 fantasy points per game to the quarterbacks. But let's not get too excited here. Zach Wilson is definitely capable of having a decent fantasy week, especially in garbage time here. But when you have a guy averaging 3.33 interceptions per game, 209 and a third rushing or throwing yards per game,
he's averaging
and 2/3 of a touchdown per game. I'm not done.
And
not done. And 55.3 completion percentage. That's a hard pass, even 2 quarterback league for Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
He's averaging over 3 interceptions a game.
No, it's 2.33 interceptions per game.
Okay.
I see where you didn't hear the first part. I got you.
Still my beating heart. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's over 2. That's bad.
It is. Yeah. But yeah, you shouldn't throw 1, much less 2 point something. But yeah, I thought you said 3 point something. I was like, that's
nope. 2 1/3 interceptions per game.
Okay. All right. So he's
bad. He's real bad. He's real bad. He's real bad. Don't
took
like
the words out of my mouth.
Man, even in a 2 quarterback league, like I might even consider just dropping him, and maybe some other team might pick him up and start him.
He might be on the waiver in our Superflex league.
I believe he is because I dropped him.
Oh, there you go.
Michael Carter, the RB, not the cornerback, got the majority of the work out of the backfield. this past week, but failed to do much with it. If you want to keep Carter on your bench as like kind of a wait and see sort of thing, be my guest. But the Titans are the 12th worst against the run, allowing exactly 100 yards per game to running backs. But I'm sorry, rushing yards per game. But you're not starting Carter or any other Jets player this week. So, Chris, what's your first matchup, sir?
My first matchup is the Lions at Bears. Yep. Let's get this stinker
Tigers,
out.
Oh my.
No, I've got a little bit to go on
Tigers
here.
Bears,
Let's see. So let's start with the Lions. The quarterback and receivers in this offense aren't fantasy viable. The running backs, Swift and Williams, and tight end Hawkinson dominate the targets with 23, 14, and 22, respectively, on the season. And with the defense as bad as the Lions, there will be fantasy production to be had in negative comeback game scripts. Hawkinson is shaping up to be an elite option at the position, and Swift is looking like an Eckler-like option for former Chargers head coach and current Lions offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn. Having said all that, I'm going to bench Goff just because you're going to have better options available in most leagues. Chicago is also third best with 11 sacks on the year. So that's that. Goff is probably going to be running for his life. Swift is on pace for 107 catches, kind of like a Alvin Kamara light, in the, I guess, prime of his career if he's not still there. The Bears seem to be more susceptible to the run versus the pass. They give up 15th most to each respectively as far as fantasy points per. Not sure what I'm going with there. But the Bears just got... But the Bears,
I'm
but
like,
the Bears,
where is he going with this?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. But the Bears seems more susceptible to run versus the pass. They give up the 15th most to each respectively as far as fantasy points per. So both the receivers and the running backs, whatever. But the Bears just got ran all over by Chubb, Hunt, and the Browns while ranking third in the NFL with 11 sacks. So clearly they are better versus the pass, and the Lions will run. As I said, they run the offense through two backs and Hawkinson. Lions are 10th best with a 4.5 yards per attempt, 4 stars for Swift, and 3.5 for Mr. Jamal Williams. The receivers, I mean, when your wide receiver with the most targets is Khalif Raymond, there's trouble. Cephas has 2 touchdowns, but, I'm going to bench all the wide receivers here. Hawkinson. Bears give up the 9th fewest points to tight ends as far as fantasy points, but Hawkinson is the tight end 3 over Waller, and that's after a stinker versus the Ravens the past week. Proceed with confidence this week for a bounce-back performance as Goff gets the ball out quickly, so a little bit more intermediate passing game. 4.25 stars for the former Hawkeye tight end. On to the Yeah, there you go. On to the Bears. The Bears managed a measly 1 passing yard and 46 rushing yards in the versus the Cleveland Browns last week. Justin Fields' starting debut was nothing short of disastrous, but this Lions defense might be just the shot of confidence the rookie quarterback needs. The Lions rank 10th worst in passing yards allowed with 809, and 7 passing touchdowns puts them at 6th worst, all while giving up the 10th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. I think the Bears have an easier time with the Lions defense and get something going, but still I see more. Let's just hope he can do it. That's as far as Fields go. Let's just wait and see, though. I hope he can help out the fantasy weapons this week. So I'm going to go ahead and stay with a bench rating for Fields. David Montgomery, the Lions give up the 5th most fantasy points to the running back position. I'm going to give him 3.75 stars. Allen Robinson is the wide receiver 67 on the season. The Lions gave up huge days to Debo, catching 9 of 12 targets for 189 yards and 1 touchdown, and Devontae Adams catching 8 of 9 targets for 121 yards. So I like Robinson to get loose here a bit and potentially score 3.25 stars, top 24-ish. Darnell Mooney, until I see more from Fields, I'm benching Mooney and Cole Kmet. And that's the Lions at Bears.
You want a fun fact? I'm not going to quote the actual percentages, but Darnell Mooney is actually leading Allen Robinson in snap percentage
He's also leading him in fantasy, I believe.
I believe so.
I came across it. Well, I just mentioned Robinson was the 67th. Mooney's higher than that, last I checked.
Yeah, he's in like the 40s, I think. I can't remember. I'm not going to look it up either.
I'm hoping for more from Fields. If I don't see it, red flags are flying.
And some of it's the Bears' offensive line too, so it's not just Fields.
Yeah.
I mean, he was sacked 9 times.
Going back to that one passing yard, technically that was 68 passing yards from Fields and 67 yards lost on 9 sacks. So I think the jury is absolutely still out on Fields, given that he couldn't. Most quarterbacks that's been in the league for 10 years can't deal with 9 sacks.
Yeah, so, he's losing like almost 9 yards or like, what is that? Like 6 yards a sack, like
something.
Anyways,
ludicrous.
Yeah, I think they were. I wonder if the Browns were just like, and I saw a highlight that Myles Garrett ate Justin Fields for lunch, but I'm like, I wonder if the Browns were just like doing heavy blitzing just to be like, hey, it's rookie, it's a bad offensive line, let's just blitz him and see what happens, and it just kept working and working and working and working.
I think defenses and defensive lines target certain guys on the opposing offensive line more than we have time to research or give credit for.
Let's move on to the Let's move on to my stupid Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins. Carson Wentz, he's the quarterback 24 so far this season, averaging only 14.89 points per game. According to this site that I stumbled upon, the undroppables.com, the Colts offensive line is actually, they have the Colts offensive line ranked 14th in pass protection and 9th overall. But here's the thing about that. Quentin Nelson just sprained his ankle, and he's also dealing with a back injury. Braden Smith is out
all year,
or has been so far. So I'm staying away from Wentz for the foreseeable future, and pretty much the rest of the Colts offensive players are, And until the Colts offense, I have the rest of the Colts injured offensive players. Sorry, bit of a tongue twister there for some reason. I.e. the Quentin Nelsons, your Braden Smiths, your T.Y. Hiltons. Until they can get healthy, there is a chance that the Colts can have like a midseason resurgence once all these guys get healthy. I mean, Wentz included too. He's dealing with 2 sprained ankles somehow. But until then, I'm just. Oh, I'm sorry. And to further illustrate my point here. The Dolphins are allowing the 11th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks with 17.7 points per game. So 1 star for Carson Wentz and probably more of a just drop him for now sort of thing. Worry about him in a couple of weeks when maybe like the big bye weeks roll around. Speaking of the undroppables.com, and the Colts offensive line, I'm not sure exactly what kind of level the Colts offensive line is playing at, but Jonathan Taylor has had some good plays this season. But I'm wondering if he's sometimes getting game scripted out, they're just getting down big, and then therefore they're bringing in Nyheim Hines, the guy who is the better pass catcher Jonathan Taylor's a good pass catcher, don't get me wrong, he's not Nyheim Hines level.
He's not on the field in these situations, yeah.
Yep, and sometimes part of the problem too is that Nyheim Hines is getting some goal line looks too. He's a smaller guy, and I wonder if they're just kind of trying to keep Jonathan Taylor healthy for the stretch of this longer season here too. And so anyways, Jonathan Taylor is averaging 49.5% of the team's offensive snaps, while Hines is getting 45.6. I'm not here to rub it in anyone's face, but this is kind of what I was really scared about with Jonathan Taylor. Not so much the defense wise, but just splitting time and the fact that maybe down the stretch, like last season, he was really good down the stretch there. But until then, I don't know, man. I'm giving him 3.5 stars here. It's the Dolphins are giving up the 6th most rushing yards with 136 rushing yards per game, and the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. But Taylor has a shot of being useful here. He's been dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury, I think it was. But yeah, I'm giving him 3.5 stars. Nyheim Hines gets to 3 stars, while the majority of Hines' production has been through the air, and that's how he does score the majority of his fantasy points. He did get a rushing touchdown last week. The snake. As I mentioned, it's a good matchup for the Colts backs, but I'm staying away from all of their pass catchers. Let's move on to the Dolphins and Jacoby Brissett. I like to start at the quarterback position. The revenge game. After the Colts just tossed Brissett aside like an old shoe, he's back and he's all about the
controversial
revenge
roster move of Jacoby.
Last week in his start against the Raiders, he completed 65% of his passes. He didn't have a touchdown, but he did run one in. So there's always that threat with Jacoby. Even though he's not much of a runner, he can do some short yardage stuff.
He's a big body
whatever.
guy.
It's kind of the same song with Brissett as, everywhere he's been. He's got an arm on him. He really does, but he's just a dink and dunker. His intended air yards per pass attempt is just 6.8, which is not very good. The plus side is that the Colts are giving up the 8th most points to the quarterback position with 21.9 points per game. I'm going to give Brissett a 2.5 stars, but only in like a super flex kind of 2 quarterback league sort of thing. You're not doing it in 1 quarterback league. Myles Gaskin, 3.5 stars. He's only averaging 8.5 points per game, but there's hope this week. The Colts are somehow allowing the 5th most rushing yards with 143 yards per game and 18.2 points per game to the position. Problem with Gaskin is that he's only on the field for roughly half the time, so I'm going to give him 3.5 stars. He's been kind of a disappointment so far with that 8.5 points per game, but you maybe don't have much better. The running backs in general have not really been all that great this year so far. Overall, not really.
More on that later.
Yeah, more on that later. Jalen Waddle.
I've got something when you're done with your matchup. Actually, go ahead.
Sure. Jalen Waddle. The Colts are giving up 31.9 fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, which is the 5th worst in the NFL.
Yeah.
Stupid Colts. Brissett did target Waddle 13 times last week. 13 times. Waddle caught 12 of them. 12. The only problem with that is he was 458 scoreless yards.
Goodness.
I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but with that level of targets, even with the dinks and the dunks, sign me up. I'm going to give Waddle 4 stars. It may not be a sexy game for Waddle, but he does have some yards after the catchability and everything, especially against the Colts corners here. Rock Ya-Sin has been the Colts' best corner this season, but I'm guessing that they put Xavier Rhodes mistakenly on to Waddle. Like I said, 4 stars for him. Mike Gesicki, speaking of big target volumes, 12 targets for Gesicki last week. He's a tight end dart throw, so he gets the 3 stars. The Colts are only giving up 5.4 fantasy points per game to the tight end position, but they haven't really played a whole lot of good tight ends either. So,
Right.
What was your fun factor or whatever that you want to say?
Could I ask you a quick question back on your notes there? What was Jonathan Taylor's snap percentages? I believe you gave it 40 or 50 something?
He is at 49.5, and Nyheim Hines is at 45.6.
What would you guess Nick Chubb's is?
I think he's at like 69, 70%.
53% average. Isn't that insane?
Doesn't surprise me.
How it just illustrates, like you mentioned, the Colts defense is bad. The Browns defense is good. Like the opportunity.
But it's not elite like everyone thought it was going to be.
Chubb is definitely not being game scripted out. Furthermore, he's been much more efficient. So it points to the offensive line and the defense of the Colts.
He's a really, really good running back.
And of course, we consider Chubb more talented, but that's also a little like prisoner of the moment too. Like it's not looking good for Taylor, man. I'm a little worried. As you said,
I think I cursed him by getting a jersey.
Oh, did you? I was going to say, as you did at the top of your matchup, you expressed as much that we're concerned. So I believe I'm up with the
Colts.
Speaking of the Browns at the Vikings. Let's start with the quarterback position. Baker is nothing more than a streaming quarterback, and this should be a great week to stream him. I like him as a low-end quarterback 1 and certainly a top-tier QB2 in Superflex. The Vikings are sixth worst, both in terms of fantasy points given up to the quarterback position and the most passing yards given up. 3.75 stars for Baker. Nick Chubb has been fantastic. The Browns are second in the NFL with 524 rushing yards, and Chubb is the RB8 on the season. This is all with that snap percentage, folks, 53. His backfield mate Hunt is the RB7 Yeah, that's right. He's better than him in fantasy terms right now. He had a huge game last week. Hunt is the RB7 after a huge game this past weekend. Hunt and Chubb are coexisting, and this Vikings defense shouldn't pose a threat to that. They aren't great versus the run, 12th worst versus in terms of rushing yards, and 19th worst in fantasy points given up to the running backs. And as we all know, the Browns will and can run on everybody. 5 stars for Chubb, 4 for Hunt. Odell Beckham Jr. came back, 5 for 9, caught 5 of 9 targets for 77 yards and 1 rush for 10 yards in week 3. To Josh's point, they didn't seem to be holding Beckham back too much. He played 64% of snaps to Donovan Peoples-Jones, 65%. And of course, the Browns run a lot of 2 tight end sets, so that's why you're seeing a 64 and 65% snap share from their quote top 2 wideouts, because apparently they, like I said, run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end wide sets.
Jumbo packages.
Due to being a heavy run scheme. The Vikings are giving up the 5th most points to fantasy wideouts, and with Jarvis on IR, I like Odell Beckham Jr. this week, 4 stars. Donovan Peoples-Jones is unstartable as far as I'm concerned, as are the tight ends for the Browns. Yeah, as far as the tight ends are too. Vikings.
What about a speculative? I'm sorry, I thought you were done. What about a speculative Anthony Schwartz?
I do like Schwartz. It's
Don't start, but just add him bench.
I actually have him up right here. That's a 35% snap share last week, so that's my concern. Looked better in week 1 and 2, and I did like what I saw in week 1 when I happened to watch that game. So, but in terms of most 12 team or redraft, steering clear.
I said never mind. Let it go, man. I was wrong. Never mind.
On to the Vikings. Kirk Cousins has been on a touchdown streak. That kind of suggests a touchdown regression is looming, as we've established this Browns defense is for real again. For those reasons, I'd like to look elsewhere in a single quarterback redraft. I'm going to give him 2 stars and probably barely keep him in the and keep him in the superflex conversation.
Really?
But I don't think they played a defense like this yet. So. And again,
I think you're overselling the Browns defense, but okay, keep going.
Dalvin Cook, the Vikings are a run-first team that works very well with play action, and Cook is trending in, as we mentioned at the top of the show, after logging 2 limited sessions, Wednesday and Thursday. Browns are only giving up 67 rushing yards per game. That's 5th best, but Cook is involved in the pass game also, averaging 5 targets per game in the first couple of weeks. Madison saw 8 targets last week in relief of Cook. Cook also 74% snaps average for weeks 1 and 2, so the usage will be there, and the Vikings have shown before if Cook is back, he's back, and they will lean on him. Even in a tough matchup, Cook should deliver a high-end running back 2/low-end running back 1 performance, 3.75 stars. Alexander Madison just isn't in the conversation if Cook is going to be healthy, so we'll leave it at that.
For sure.
Adam Thielen, speaking of touchdown regression, but seriously, I do prefer Jefferson this week despite Thielen's touchdown streak. He has going in conjunction with Cousins. And don't get me wrong, they're a great duo and they absolutely have chemistry together, but I'm leaning towards this being a tougher matchup, a tougher test for the Vikings pass game. And Jefferson ends up getting most of the yards and targets to be had, so I'm going to give a measly 2.5 stars to Thielen. Jefferson has seen great target numbers consistently. Like he's not just averaging 10 per game. He's seen 9, 10, and 11 the last 3 weeks, giving you an average of 10, of course. He's scored the last 2 weeks. I'm going to give him 4 stars. Tyler Croft has been a bit of a darling lately, bit of a sleeper discussion, but right now he's dealing with glute and elbow injuries and didn't practice.
Sorry, who?
Tyler Croft. Did I get his name wrong?
And what position does he play for?
Tight end. I'm sorry to move on for the Vikings.
You mean Tyler Conklin?
Oh, thank you. There's another player named Croft, isn't there? Is he a tight end also?
Yes, he is.
All right. My apologies, folks. Good catch,
cool.
Josh. Conklin, to be clear, has been a bit of a tight end sleeper, a bit of a darling. Targets are looking up, but he's dealing with glute and elbow injuries right now and didn't practice Wednesday. I don't have a Thursday update for him, so that's important to mention. But I'm just going to, with the injury scare and that he's, like I said, an outside looking in, kind of a sleeper guy, I'm going to go ahead and bench him. So,
as you should.
Exactly. But keep your eye out, so that's your Browns and Vikings.
Okay, so how many points per game do you think the Browns are giving up to the quarterback position?
In fantasy terms, right? Of course.
Yep. Just real quick.
18.8.
19.9. I'll start Kirk Cousins with 19.9. Their corners that you think are so vaunted. Greg Newsome is their best at 27, which is not bad. But then it's Troy Hill at 39 and Denzel Ward at 55. I think you're overselling the Browns defense just a hair. Let's move on to the Washington football team versus the Falcons. That episode of The Simpsons never, like every time I see Atlanta Falcons, it's always the Atlanta Falcons. Anyway, um, Tyler, is it Heineke or is it Heineke? I'm not really
I've
sure
heard
which.
Heineke, and that's what
Okay,
I'm going
we'll
with.
go with Heineke
Yeah.
then. Heineke is averaging 18 points per game right now, which is 1.9 less than Kirk Cousins. Just saying. Or than the Browns are allowing to the opposing quarterback. That is being brought down by his. That is that average is being brought down by his week one mid-game appearance for the injured Fitzmagic. In his 2 starts, he's averaging 21.7 fantasy points per game. That's pretty good. Pretty good right there. He's rolling into a plus matchup with Atlanta defense, who is giving up 25 fantasy points per game, which is third most by any team. And Taylor, is it Taylor or Tyler? It's Taylor. Taylor Heineke. I'm butchering this poor chap's name. I'm butchering his name left
Taylor.
and right.
It's right
He's
here.
averaging 7.3 yards to his targets, and which is not great, but not bad either. I'm going to give Heineke, whatever, 4 stars. Let's move on to Antonio Gibson, who also gets 4 stars. The Atlanta defense is middle of the road, giving up 118.3 rushing yards per game to opposing teams. I don't see Washington getting down too big in this game, so that should mean that J.D. McKissick isn't going to cut into Gibson's workload too much. Gibson is averaging 11.6 fantasy points per game. It's the RB 16 so far this season, which isn't great compared to where you draft him, but it's also not terrible either. You're not like cutting bait because he's not returning value or anything like that. I think this is going to be a day you won't regret starting a Mr. Antonio Gibson. Let's move on to Terry McLaurin here. He is averaging 8.3 targets per game, 77 yards per game, and a third of a touchdown per game. That's getting him to the wide receiver 22. Now, that is a little disappointing compared. He was more or less the wide receiver 10 off of most boards and a lot of drafts that was into. Terry McLaurin, though, could be getting some help from Curtis Samuel potentially coming back from injury this week, making his regular season debut. Atlanta's defense is giving up 26 and a half fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, which is the 11th worst. I'm going to give Terry 3 3/4 stars. It's Curtis Samuel, I'm giving him 1.5 stars. He's in the sense that I think he's a really good speculative ad. Hope if he does play this week, you can see what he does, but he's still riding the pine for your fantasy,
for your
fantasy team.
Fantasy
Logan
pine.
Thomas. Yep, the fantasy pine for your fantasy team. Logan Thomas, I'm giving him 4 stars. For those of you bought into this Logan Thomas hype train, I admit I was wrong on this guy. Like, he has paid off. He's not giving he's not giving you elite numbers, but he is giving you 9.2 points per game. And for your tight end I think he was like the 6th tight end off the board according to ADP, maybe 7th, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I said, 7, it's not elite, but a lot of that has been his catching a touchdown in 2 out of his 3 games. But in the game that he didn't score a touchdown, he scored 7 fantasy points. So that's not that bad. The Falcons are giving up 11.1 fantasy points to the opposing tight ends. So give me Logan Thomas. Matt Ryan. Here's an interesting fact about the Washington football team. They are giving up 27.3 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. I don't know what's going on with this defense here, but they were supposed to be a very vaunted defense.
Well, especially the pass
The thing
rush.
is, and here's the thing though. If you look at the football team schedule, they've faced a very good Herbie, Daniel Jones, who ran all over them, and Josh Allen, who more or less imposed his will upon them.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Yeah, Matty Ice has a legit shot at finding the cracks in the armor here, and what was supposed to be a great defense this season, and Washington has also given up 307 passing yards per game. So there's a chance for Ryan here, but he's not playing on the level that he used to play. I think he has a real good shot here, so I'm giving him 3 3/4 stars. It's Matt Ryan. Are you going to feel good about? Are you okay? So are you going to start Matt Ryan over Kirk Cousins this week? With all those stats I just listed off about Washington's defense not being all that great, Matt Ryan over Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
All right. Would you like to put your money where your mouth is?
I was going to ask you the question when you were done: Heineke or Kirk Cousins? Clearly, you're.
I know. I'm going Matt Ryan or Kirk Cousins right here.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. We'll put it on the board when we're done recording. Just remind me at the end of after recording. Okay, so I'm going to lump Mike Davis and Cordero Patterson. The Falcons are averaging only 82.7 rushing yards per game as a team. That is also like with all the other tertiary backs in this. Then it's surprisingly only the fifth worst. Now, Chris, just real quick, give me 4 teams that you think might be rushing for less yards than 82.7. Just real quick. Just Chiefs, give me some 4 names.
4 teams?
Yeah.
Chiefs. Dolphins. Gosh darn Jacksonville, except probably not. And I am blanking Atlanta.
We're talking about Atlanta, so
sorry.
Atlanta. One more.
Okay. Tampa.
Okay, you got 1 out of 4. The 4 that are worse than them is the New York Jets, the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. In that order.
Okay.
Steelers are the worst rushing team in the league right now. That's fine. What are the Falcons? What are they doing? Using their backs as short yardage pass catchers, and for a lack of a better term, and not to steal the footballers' material, but they are really like I couldn't think of a better term than they are running through the air here. I really couldn't. I've spent a couple days and a lot of thought on this.
Oh, it is theirs. You're right. It's kind of a joke. That's right. It is. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a very apt statement though, and so
I love it,
think of what the Lions did for more or less the entirety of Stafford's career. And it's just dink dunk. The short yardage is their run game more or less. Patterson has actually been besting Mike Davis in the category as far as I don't know where I was going with that statement. That went absolutely nowhere. But I'm giving Patterson a low-end flex grade of 3 stars, and I'm putting Mike Davis on the bench.
Okay.
That sentence literally goes nowhere.
I think we're both 0 for 1 as far as those type of things.
I got a few more, but those I did on purpose. That one was accident. Calvin Ridley, I'm giving him 4.5 stars. Ridley's got a good one this week. I don't remember the cornerbacks that Washington had last season. Kendall Fuller, I believe, is one of them, but he has definitely taken a step back, but is still their best cornerback. And he's ranked as PFF's 42nd best corner there, with an overall grade of 65. That's still top half, but that's not good. So I'm going to give Calvin Ridley 4.5 stars. You're not playing any other Falcons wide receiver. So let's move on to Mr. Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Washington is only allowing 7.2 points per game to the tight end position. But here's the tight ends they've faced so far. An aging Jared Cook, Kyle Rudolph, who remember plays for the Giants now, and aging. Dawson Knox. None of those guys are a unicorn level of talent. Pitts may not be returning dividends on the draft capital that you put into them, but I think there are better days ahead. And listen to this. Pitt's snap percentages have only gone up since his week 1 start. Week 1, he had 68. So week 2, 69. And week 3, 84% of the team's offensive snaps. He's second on the team in receiving yards and tied for second in the reception category too. This is all coming from this guy right here, who was not in on Pitt's preseason. I'm giving him 3.5 stars this week. And with maybe I was wrong on Pitts. I can admit when I'm wrong. We'll see. What's your next matchup, Chris?
Speaking of Dawson Knox, I've got the Texans at Bills. Oh, wow. I really glossed over the Texans. I'm not going to lie. It's probably what I should do. What's that?
No, you didn't.
I didn't yet, but I'm about to. No, the only name worth talking about is Brandon Cooks. He's on quite a tear. He's having a nice season.
What about old turkey neck there? That pic, you photoshopped that picture. You said
I didn't. I did not. I don't know how to Photoshop.
You better put this in the video too of him. Like, oh my, Davis Mills
of his
oh
quarterback
my.
Davis Mills.
That is a long neck.
How is he? So again, Brandon Cooks is a target magnet. He's the only
one,
option.
folks.
They're constantly going to be behind in games. He's a top 10 wide receiver. He's the wide receiver 6. Forgive me. So I'm going to give him against this Bills defense. Get him in your flex at least at 3.75 stars.
What?
That's yeah. I know.
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
All about volume.
Is Brandon Cooks going to hit 1,000 yards again this season?
Yeah,
I think he's going to.
It's his middle name. He literally went to the judge.
Brandon
and
1,000 yards Cooks. Yeah, I think it might be, dude.
That's receiving Cooks. That's Brandon with an I. He changed it back to an O. No, I'm just kidding. Onward to the Bills, because again, that's all the Texans that are worth talking about here. Josh Allen's detractors and naysayers had to eat some crow this week, as Allen bounced back in a huge way versus what is supposed to be a good defense, as Josh alluded to earlier with the football team. No accuracy concerns with a 74.4% completion percentage, well over 300 yards, and 4 scores through the air, throwing 1 on the ground for good measure. Diggs, however, didn't see any of those 4 scores, and his yardage totals have been downright bad. 69 yards in week 1. Nice. 60 in week 2 and 62 in week 3. Although he is seeing 129 air yards per game. That's 4th among wide receivers. He is still seeing 10.3 targets per game and 4 red zone targets through 3 weeks, yet no touchdowns. So I'm going back to kind of statistical bounce back, if you will. I like Diggs to end his scoreless streak versus the Texans and Allen to have another great fantasy day, probably with another score on the ground for the quarterback. The Texans have allowed the second most rushing touchdowns with 6 and have already yielded 3 rushing scores to quarterbacks. That's 5 stars for Josh Allen. And I'm going to give 4 stars to Diggs. Forgive me for going out of order there in position, but I thought it was important to mention the receiver. Singletary Moss, this is definitely worth some discussion. Singletary has seen his snap share decrease every week with a 43% versus 56% versus Moss in favor of Moss in week 3. That's 43 versus 56% in Moss's favor last week. Maybe Moss just wasn't 100% in the beginning of the year, although it was called a healthy scratch. It's been a situation I haven't wanted to mess with, but I did drop a couple of insignificant bottom of the roster players for him in a couple leagues. The Texans are 15th, are giving up the 15th most rushing yards. Actually, not an awful defense through 3 weeks. They've given up 5 of 7 targets per game to running backs. So again, that's them catching 5 out of their 7 targets. All the running backs are averaging that against the Texans. So there should be plenty of work for both backs in the high volume Bills attack. I lean Moss's way with those 6 rushing touchdowns given up and hoping he's the goal line guy and gets a few targets here too. So I'm going to give 4 stars to Moss, 3 to Singletary.
4 stars?
Yep. I'm feeling froggy. On to
all right. I got some bold calls coming up, so that I'll give you that one.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Speaking of Taylor Heineken, no, I'm just kidding. I know it's Heineken. On to the other ancillary receiving weapons in Emmanuel Sanders, Beasley, and Dawson Knox. During Diggs' struggles, Emmanuel Sanders had a decent stretch and is worth an add in most leagues, averaging 6.6 targets per game and looking good doing it. I wouldn't expect 2 touchdowns every week like in week 3, but he seems to be the other wide receiver you want in a high-powered offense. With a great schedule coming up, including this week, Texans, Chiefs, Titans, Dolphins, Jags, and Jets. He's currently the wide receiver 23, Emmanuel Sanders is. Same kind of goes for Beasley, as he is actually the target leader, and particularly in a full PPR. He's a decent add and a bye week fill-in. I'm going to give 3 stars for Sanders this week and 2.5 for Beasley.
What about Gabe Davis?
No.
Just joking, man. You're not starting him. You shouldn't even be on your roster.
Dawson Knox has seen his targets increase every week and has scored the last 2 weeks. Houston gives up the 4th most points to the tight end position, making my tight end sleeper of the week worthy of 3.5 stars for me. Yep, I just made up a tight end sleeper of the week on the fly. That's right.
I think you're being a little low on him.
Oh yeah, yeah. I did pick him up. Forgive me, I don't remember how I dropped.
A touch low.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to my guns there, but yeah, he's definitely coming up in conversations, and
it's also Dawson Knox, who everyone has just been for like his entire like NFL career of like, Dawson Knox, blah blah blah. I think it's his 4th season with the Bills. In his NFL career too. So I mean, like it could be breakout time, but he's been kind of a ghost.
In a bad and good.
Anyways, Titans on his 4th one, yeah, I think. Anyways,
I think last year
was that your matchup?
Yeah. That was it.
Yep, I was just gonna say something about the Texans giving up 11.9 fantasy points per game and being 4th overall in that, but yeah, you hit it. Cool.
Heck yeah.
Let's move on to the New York Giants at the New Orleans Saints. This one's gonna be really quick, dude. This one's. I really should have gave this one to you because I'm just like, I don't know. Like I was digging through it and I'm just like, what do I want to do with this? Other than here, I'm going to start with Daniel Jones.
It's all about pace. Let's go.
It would appear that the Giants staff are drawing up run plays for Daniel Jones. He's been averaging 8 rushing attempts per game and 54.7 rushing yards per game. Do you think that's based on that hilarious run that he had last year where he had a touchdown and he just tripped?
Absolutely. They're like, if it weren't just for the turf monster grabbing his toe, he would be the next Michael Vick. That's exactly what their thought process was.
Let's not go that far. He's not going to drown any dogs or anything. Last week in a game where Jones lost Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard to hamstring injuries, he wasn't nearly as productive through the air. The entire Giants offense was off against the weak Atlanta defense last week. This week he's going up against the New Orleans D that's allowing just 10.8 fantasy points per game. That is second best. 2 stars for Daniel Jones, maybe in a 2-quarterback league, but that's about it. Saquon, my Saquon. I'm giving you 3.25 stars. He had a pretty good game against Atlanta, but it wasn't the ripper that I personally thought he would. Nolans is allowing just 10.5 fantasy points per game to running backs. I kind of doubt you're sitting Barkley here, but it's not a good matchup, kids. It could get ugly. I mean, the entire Giants offense isn't very good. I'm giving 2.25 stars to Kenny Golladay. Kenny G may have some smooth routes, but he hasn't top 9 fantasy points this season. Don't look for him to do it here either, folks. With Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are maybe going to miss this week with their hammy injuries, like I mentioned already. That means that Golladay is consistently going to draw Marshawn Lattimore, who is PFF's number 1 cornerback against wide receivers. He's really good, folks. Lattimore is after a dud last year, injury plagued season last year. Lattimore is back so far this season. He's been playing elite level at the cornerback position. So Kenny Golladay, 2.25 stars. I'm gonna pass on every other Giants player because they're either injured or I don't care. Jameis Winston, I'm giving you 1 star. You know why? Hey Chris, do you like less than 150 passing yards and maybe 2 touchdowns, probably an interception from your quarterback? Do you like that?
No thanks.
Yeah, me neither. I think the Saints are scared of letting Jameis simultaneously unleashing his up and downsides. If you remember, Jameis can throw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions too. Don't start Jameis Winston, folks, and maybe don't even have him on your roster. Alvin Kamara, the Giants are allowing 107 rushing yards per game. What it matters when it comes to Kamara's is receiving work. He currently leads the Saints in targets and receptions, 4.5 stars for Kamara. Hey Chris, do you want to do a quick check on that Clement versus Adam Troutman bet that we made?
Would you like
Clement versus Troutman?
Do you have it ready to go? Yeah, let's do it.
I'm winning. There we go. What's your next matchup?
Great. Real quick on Jameis, I wanted to say hopefully box score, or not even box score, people that only click on the fantasy points aren't forgetting that he threw for 5 touchdowns in week 1, and it has blown his numbers.
With 148 passing yards, I think it was.
It was insane. And secondarily, last week he completed a Jameis where he is falling down and just like heaves it, but he completed it for a touchdown, for goodness sakes, to Callaway. I was like, if they didn't see that how that happened, they would think that was a good play, in the box score. So don't be fooled.
Yeah,
right now, folks.
He just puked it into Callaway's hands.
Exactly. Very well said. All right, let's pick up the pace here. Let's go. Chiefs at Eagles. Pat Mahomes. I mean, come on.
I'm a Dallas Chris, fan. Can I interrupt you for a second? I just wanted to not keep the pace up and just kind of dawdle a little bit.
No, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Pat Mahomes, come on. I'm a Dallas fan, and I believe in them.
Wait, hold on one second here, real quick.
Just stop.
Keep
Pat Mahomes. I mean, come on. I'm a Dallas fan, and I believe in them this year, but this Philly defense is bad. Mahomes is angry about his performance in week 3 and will have the ball a lot due to the inept Philly offense, and he will capitalize. That's 5 stars for Pat Mahomes. Onward to CEH, Mr. Allaire. We were all but ready to bury this guy. Then he turns around and has a 100-yard rushing day and chips in a score through the air. But he did fumble. But Andy Reid went right back to him, giving the young running back a vote of confidence. I think this Philly defense will be reeling, and Mahomes and the offense as a whole will be on a mission in what amounts to a must-win game on the road. Remember, they're 1-2, folks. Meanwhile, CEH will see his share and probably scores 3.25 stars for Mr. Allaire.
You're going to give him 3.25 stars when he's getting a touchdown in there, too?
Yeah. Have you seen his yardage totals? Besides last week?
Yes, I have. Okay, man, whatever. It's your matchup.
We'll see where he ends up.
You're all over the map with these ratings.
Tyrone Hill. Philly gives up the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and it did seem to bear itself out. Ty Hill, whatever. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill gives up, whatever. Now you've got me all discombobulated. Tyreek Hill. Philly gives up the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and it did seem to bear itself out even in the Dallas game, where the emphasis on the Dallas offensive attack was the running backs and the tight ends. More on that later. But this is Ty Hill, and he will produce 4.25 stars in this matchup. I'm not playing Josh Gordon, benching any other Chiefs wide receivers.
Kelsey, perhaps?
Philly just gave up 6 catches, 80 yards, and 2 scores to Dalton Schultz. Kelsey still managed catching 7 out of 11 targets for 104 yards in the loss to the Chargers last week. I'm going to give Kelsey 5 stars because I'm not dumb. On to the Eagles. Jalen Hurts. I was surprised to see Hurts' stats weren't as bad as I had thought. They actually weren't that bad. 25 out of 39 for 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks to go along with 9 rushes for 35 yards. But make no mistake, he wasn't good. Nonetheless, with garbage time and a negative game script and his rushing ability, he's a fine streamer this week, 3.5 stars. Miles Sanders. The game script of the blowout didn't help Sanders, considering he isn't the passing downs back last time I checked. But to make matters worse, he only received 2 carries. That's more than 4 times less than his quarterback. Still, the Chiefs are potentially the worst run defense in the league, giving up the second most yards with 481 and the most rushing touchdowns with 7, along with giving up the third most fantasy points to the position, keeping Sanders barely in the running back 2 conversation, albeit a tad risky because that floor. 3.25 stars for Miles Sanders. Kenneth Gainwell, averaging just 5.3 carries per game and 3.3 targets per game. I don't feel comfortable starting Gainwell. I'm going to leave him on the bench. Devonta Smith, more of the same story with Smith here. He has to score to be viable, and you can't count on it with Hurts' arm. I'm going to bench Devonta Smith. On to the tight end monster, Goddard and Ertz. Goddard led the team with 66 receiving yards last week, but Ertz had more targets with 7 and scored. So bench them all unless
you're desperate.
Shoot me
in the head and just give me
exactly.
Get it over with.
So just bench them unless you're desperate, and that is your Chiefs at Eagles.
I will swear on my phone, because that's why I'm looking at right the second, that you said that Miles Sanders got 4 times less than the quarterback.
4 times less carries. then the quarterback, Hurts. That's 9-2. Sanders had 2 carries.
What, there's a lot of work in that statement right there. I gotta really dig through it, and I'm not trying to. I just thought it was. I'm like, man, what is
more than 4 times less? Brilliantly.
So less than a quarter of the work. Then, yeah,
that would
I
be
gotcha.
better.
I was like, I had to do the math backwards. I'm like, oh, that's what he means. Okay. I'm like, you're making my brain work, and I'm really tired, Chris, and I really don't appreciate it.
Less than a quarter. I like that better. Next matchup.
Next matchup. It's the I am so tired. Anyways, let's go on to the Carolina Panthers at the Dallas Cowboys. Sam Darnold, he's currently the quarterback 12 on the season. He's averaging 21.41 fantasy points per game. That's rock solid, man. And this is a quarterback 12 with over 21 points per game. I'm down with that, man. Would you go Darnold over Kirk Cousins this week?
I was waiting for that same exact question.
Before I say everything else.
Probably, yeah. I probably go Darnold over Cousins. It's not. I don't want to start either one though, because I think.
Pause the recording. Let me get Darnold on my team. No, I'm just let's. Okay,
but it's
so this
very
week,
close because I think you're about ready to sell this Dallas defense short. But then again, I'm a Dallas fan, so go ahead.
I don't know. I think you need to listen to what I have to say first, real quick. How about that?
My pinky.
So, like I said, Darnold is currently the quarterback 12. This week he's the Dallas D, who is allowing the league's second most yards through the air with 330. That's nothing to celebrate. They're allowing that many yards through the air.
Oh, my bad.
But only the 12th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. Last week, where Darnold didn't throw a touchdown, he instead ran 2 in. Darnold has had some ball handling issues. He's had 4 fumbles so far this season. He's only lost 1, but that's a bit of a cause for concern here. So I'm still going to give Darnold 4 stars in this matchup. Sorry, I spoiled that for you, but that meant about Dak. Chuba Hubbard. Chris, what did you? Yeah, Chuba
Darnold's
Hubbard
got 4 stars, right?
Yep.
Okay.
But there's potential that he could turn the ball over.
Yeah.
But I'm still, dude, 21 points per game. That's a good 4-star rating right there. Chuba Hubbard, 3 stars. But I want to know, like, what were you putting some fab bids on for Chuba Hubbard at all? Anything? I put $9 out there. I lost to a $10 bid. I don't think that
I was going to bring that up. Not that you had 9, but that the winning bid was 10 in that particular league. I was astonished to see that Shauner won with a bid of 10. However, he was the type of player that is a 2-week rental, and
for sure.
Again, I think Dallas defense is decent. It's neither here nor there, I guess. But I wasn't ready to put up a lot. If I was in a position where I really needed running back, maybe an $18 guy. But I wasn't in a dire need in any one team where Fab was involved,
I guess. So Hubbard, what I have written down here is I'm giving him 3 stars, but it really should probably be more like a 2.5. Hubbard and CMC, they do have some very similar characteristics and play style. But Hubbard doesn't quite have that CMC electricity, like that kind of that. I don't know what it is about CMC, but like he's just like other guys are shaped exactly like him and everything, but he just has that it factor. And Hubbard's going to need that to go up against the Dallas D that is allowing only 70.3 rushing yards per game and 10.8 fantasy points per game. So I'm hoping you didn't melt down your fab for Hubbard because like you said, it's a spot start or 2 for Hubbard, and then it's probably back to CMC. So I'm going to change it to 2.5 stars here. DJ Moore, he's shown that he's definitely Darnold's top receiver. He leads the Carolina wide receiving core with 81.2 offensive snaps. He has the most targets, the most receiving yards, and he also is PFF's 4th best wide receiver to cornerback matchup this week, and that's even going up against your vaunted Trayvon Diggs or whatever that Joker's name is. in Dallas. I'm giving you a hard time, man.
You mean the
but
NFC You mean AKA the NFC Defensive Player of the Week?
Great. I'm gonna give DJ Moore 4 stars here. Terrace Marshall. He's a speculative ad here. And that's the only reason that's the only reason I'm mentioning him here. The Panthers' next 4 opponents are the Eagles, the Vikings, the Giants, and the Falcons. Other than maybe the Eagles, those secondaries are not very good. So this was also written maybe right after that Dallas game on Monday night. So, the stats weren't in on it and everything. But the Eagles up until that point had been playing the corners had been playing really well. So, and even in that game, it was mainly Dalton Schultz and everything, which I'm about to bring up too. The wide receivers in that game really didn't do a whole lot.
Off the top of my head, it was like 4 or 5 targets here or there, and
it
was okay.
Anyways, let's move on to Dak here. I want to get through all this. Just hold your comments till the very end, okay? Mm-hmm. Just let me get through this. The Panthers are allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks here, 13. The least amount of passing yards, 146 passing yards per game, and the fewest real-life football points to opposing teams of 10 points per game. These amazing defensive stats are going to be put to the test this week. Here's the opposing quarterbacks that the Panthers D have faced. Rookie Zach Wilson, terrible. Jameis Winston, we've covered him in his lack of mediocrity recently. Turkey neck Mike Lennon. I'm sorry, Davis Mills. That's what the hell is an opposite of a murderer's row? I figured it out. It's a column of kittens. The exact opposite of a murderer's row is a column of kittens. That's a column of kittens the Panthers have faced at the quarterback position. Dak is better than them kittens at QB. I'm going to give him 3 3.25 stars. Sorry, that's 3 3/4 stars.
3/4, gotcha.
Yeah, and it's just in case the Panthers D is really that legit. Just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Zeke so far this season, he is out snapping Tony Pollard 3-1-ish, like somewhere in there. Zeke has more rushing yards, similar receiving production, receiving production, and he has a bigger contract. Zeke ain't going anywhere, and neither should you, because of this whole Pollard manure about how Pollard's better than Zeke and all that. Mm-hmm. That has hopefully been put to rest for now after last week where Zeke had a pretty decent game. The Panthers did hold Alvin Kamara to only 5 fantasy points in week 2. But they did that to the entire Saints offense that played like dogs in the back of a van. So I'm going to give Zeke 3.5 stars here. Hopefully you got that comparison there.
Sure, I did.
CeeDee Lamb. Hey, Chris, do you happen to know who has more fantasy points, CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper?
CeeDee Lamb by this point, I'm sure.
It is CeeDee. PFF has both CeeDee and Amari with just average matchups against their respective cornerback ratings, but with Amari giving the slight edge. So I will give, despite my gloating, CeeDee the 3.5 stars.
Points, to make that clear. That's the difference between the two in fantasy
How
points.
Many?
0.9 points.
It's
not even a whole point.
It is. It's more than that. Despite my gloating, I'll give CeeDee the 3.5, and I'll give Amari Cooper the slight edge of 3 3/4. On to Dalton Schultz. Chris, you posted in the Discord server very annoyingly while I was at work, gloating that you were watching the game, and I was stuck being a workaholic at work. That, which, by the way, you can check out in the show notes to get a link to our Discord server, and feel free to join in and join the chatter and everything. You mentioned that you thought that Schultz was a starter and getting the majority of the tight end work for your boys. Would it surprise you if I told you were right?
It would surprise me that those words escaped your lips. It doesn't surprise me that it happened. It doesn't surprise me that it happened that I was right. Although I think the snap percentage might still be very close, but go ahead.
I'm not done yet. Schultz has outsnapped Blake Jarwin every single game so far this season. Although Schultz has more targets, catches, yards, and touchdowns than Blake Jarwin. Did you see what I did there? I was trying to mislead you a little bit and think that Jarwin was better, although it's really actually Schultz, and you were absolutely right. And you can go fly a kite.
Next matchup: Seahawks at Niners. Russell Wilson has seen his touchdowns cut in half each week. 4, 2, then 1. He only has 32 rushing yards. The Niners gave up 3 touchdowns to Jared flipping Goff in week 1, though, but held Aaron Rodgers to 2 scores and a nail-biter last week. Wilson averaged 3 touchdowns last season versus the Niners, but one of those was a 2-touchdown, 181-yard performance. Still, Wilson remains a quarterback 1, and due to some top quarterbacks having some tough matchups this week, he's pushed up a tad, keeping him just within quarterback 1 territory with 3.75 stars. Chris Carson, as he usually does when he's healthy, has quietly become an RB1 on the season. Barely. He's the RB12. Really? Yeah, he's RB12. He's averaging a robust...
keep going. I'm going to look this up.
He's averaging a robust 4.9 yards per carry and averaging one touchdown per game. The Niners aren't doing that well versus the run, having given up 10th most rushing yards on the season with 367, and coming off an 82-yard, 1-touchdown performance versus Aaron Jones. I like Carson this week as a solid high-end RB2, low-end RB1, 3.75 stars. DK Metcalf. DK finally had a wide receiver 1 type of week with his 16.7 fantasy points. He scores and gets over 100 yards for the first time all year. He is the wide receiver 16 on the season, not the top 5 guy some were hoping for. This is exactly what the detractors were worried about. Not enough volume and a run-heavy attack with a dynamic wide receiver on the other side. In Week 17 last year versus these same Niners, DK was not the guy to have with 3 catches and 21 yards, while Lockett had 12 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But quite the opposite when they met in Week 7 last year, where he grabbed 12 catches, 161 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Throw your hands up. I don't know. Let's get Lockett in here real quick before we get stars for both of them.
Can I say something real quick before you continue? Is that the 49ers cornerbacks are a little bit different than they were last year. So I'm not saying that this is potentially a better matchup for DK. It's just that it's not quite the apples to apples. It's more of
he's also having a worse year than he was last year.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm glad I never had a chance on DK in any drafts this season. I would be pulling. Okay, I would be pulling my beard out.
Yeah, you'd have him on your team. You had him relatively high, but that's neither here nor there. Your draft worked out. Well, we were waiting on the Lockett dud game, and there it was versus the Vikings in Week 3.
He got injured.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of his thing, though, isn't it? He did not practice Thursday. He did come back into that game, though, if you didn't realize that.
Nope,
the Niners are without their best corner in Jason Verrett, along with potentially their starting slot corner. Lockett plays out of the slot much more than DK, but Lockett suffered a knee injury last week, as we just said. But he did return. That will cause me to just lean DK over Lockett this week. I'm going to give 4 stars to DK and 3 to Lockett. Gerald Everett has been an okay touchdown-dependent tight end dart throw, but was put on the COVID list Wednesday. Worth keeping an eye on. There are probably better options out there. Whatever you want to call that, a 1.5 stars. I don't even almost a bench.
3 stars.
I guess.
Tight end dart throw.
No, not even. I don't think because of the COVID thing on top of his targets. I just don't think it's that good of a throw. He has been, was my statement. He has.
But what
been
if Lockett doesn't play?
That's a good point. Then absolutely. Let's talk 3 stars in. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Assuming Lockett doesn't play, he gets off the COVID whatevers, and, okay. Tight end dart throw.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of ifs in there.
I was just gonna say that before moving along. On to your matchup, Josh. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Niners. Didn't we not do the Niners portion of this? My apologies.
Tell me some good news about Elijah Mitchell. I need it for my dynasty squad.
Jimmy G / Trey Lance. I put the / just to get a quick comment in here about Trey Lance. Jimmy G struggled last week with 2 turnovers before bringing the Niners back temporarily. If he is going to play turnover-prone football, that leash is going to get shorter and shorter with Lance breathing down his neck. Lance is just inexplicably scored like every time he's touched the ball. The players are drawn up for it. And I'm not insinuating this is happening this week or anything. I'm just saying if Jimmy G struggles again, that leash will get shorter and shorter the more time that goes on, and he's already platooning Trey Lance in. I'm not claiming that Trey Lance is. It's very limited packages, let's put it that way. Let's move on to the running back, Eli Mitchell. Mitchell should win his job back if healthy, since Sermon was underwhelming with 10 carries for 31 yards and 1 touchdown in Week 3 versus Green Bay.
That's 3.1 yards a carry, Chris. That's amazing.
Right. The Seahawks give up the most fantasy points to running backs and the 3rd most rushing yards, so it should be a nice game to get going. If he does go, I think he's trending towards being in 4.25 stars. I'm going to go and bench Sermon. We don't want any of the running backs in here.
No.
Assuming Mitchell's good to go. I mean, if it is Sermon, it's not going to be 4.25 stars. Let's put it that way. No. Debo struggled a little versus the Packers, but still got a ton of targets. He's averaging 10 targets per game. Oh yeah, did he? Mm-hmm. He's still averaging 10 targets per game, so he's still was in long enough to get that many targets. And I did not include him in the beginning, I don't think. But no, you probably left the game. He did temporarily, I know, left the game. I know that. I just don't know for how long. Where were we? 10 targets per game, and it's still the guy you want besides Kittle. Seattle is just not very good defense overall, giving up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers and the 7th most passing yards. I think Debo is the wide receiver to play this week, despite Ayuk showing up last week with 4 catches, 1 touchdown, but only 37 yards. I like Debo moving forward still, thanks to his usage / targets. 4.5 stars for Debo. Ayuk, very desperate flex with 2 stars. I didn't give Kittle a rating. How dare I? Kittle is going to be in your lineup. Let's give him a solid 4 stars this week. My apologies.
I don't accept your apology, but I'm a jerk. So whatever. Exactly. Yeah, he did leave the game, and then he kind of came back, and I was like looking at all these alerts on Sunday, because my dynasty roster is very banged up and very kind of average at best, but like Lockett got injured, Debo got injured. I'm just like, oh my God. Just gonna. Yeah. Anyways, let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams. Josh's game of the week. Dude, if this game isn't on regular TV this week, I will be a stranger at a bar. I know that sounds weird, but a stranger nonetheless at a bar.
I haven't done that forever. Maybe I will too. If I have to.
Dude, I want to watch this game. Like, I wanted to watch the Rams-Bucks game last week, and it wasn't on regular TV, but I had other things I really needed to kind of do. And as much of a turd sandwiches this week has been at work, I'm glad I didn't go out and have some drinks. So anyways, Chris, I gotta admit, I really didn't want the Cardinals again, and I thought I gave them to you, but for reals here, I
don't think I've had the Cardinals or Dallas. We'll work on that next
week. You've had Dallas. But you have not had the Cardinals, and I have it written down here over here that I am not a Cardinals / Kyler Murray fan. I am not. This is by complete accident. I promise you. No 5-star rating for Kyler this week. None. I promise you that. Kyler's been 5. He's been going through a bouncy house of opponents. Man, that one didn't really land at like the corner, like the column of kittens. But anyways, regardless, here's the defenses that Kyler has faced so far are not so good. So here come the Rams. Surprisingly, the Rams are giving up the 8th most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks with 281.3 per game. Kyler Murray 5 stars. Sorry. Have it. The Rams are allowing a 19.2 fantasy points per game, but are in a 7-way tie for the 2nd most rushing touchdowns with 2 allowed so far in the season. So you know what that means. 5 stars for Kyler Murray. I'm sorry. I'm really tired, Chris. I'm really tired. That we're not giving Kyler Murray 5 stars here. He is averaging. He is the quarterback 1 on the season so far this year, though, and he is averaging 29.73 fantasy points per game. I don't think he's going to be getting that many this week for realsy. If DeAndre Hopkins has been dealing with a rib injury, he played through it last week, but he was kind of more of a decoy and Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore and even AJ Green were really kind of the benefactors of so. So if Nuke does go, I'm going to give Kyler 4 stars. For reals, 4 stars, not 5, 4. 4 stars. If Nuke doesn't play, I'm going to bump Kyler down to 3 3/4. But it sounds like he's going to, even in a decoy fashion. Chase Edmonds, I'm going to give him 2 stars, 3 if Nuke doesn't play. Mainly because the Rams are allowing 15.5 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Edmonds is on 62.4% of the team's offensive snaps, but it's not the greatest matchup this week. And if, like I said, if Nuke can't go, there might be an uptick in some receptions for Edmonds, so I'm gonna give him the edge. Um, you're not relying on James Conner and his 2 rushing touchdowns that he got last week.
Mm-mm.
If DeAndre Hopkins does play, he's only getting 3.25 stars. Jalen Ramsey is good. He's so good. He's the PFF's 3rd best cornerback in all of football. We all know that. Blah blah blah. I don't know, man. I don't know if you can really trust DeAndre Hopkins this week. You're probably not going to bench him. If you do, and he scores single digits, I want to hear from some people about this for reals. But he's DeAndre Hopkins, and you never know. Christian Kirk, despite being in on only 58.4% of the Cardinals snaps, Kirk is outscoring Nuke. I mean, a lot of that is because of last week, but this isn't the week to get Christian Kirk. Even if Hopkins doesn't play, it's still a bad matchup for all of the Arizona wide receivers here. AJ Green, Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk, Nuke. The Rams are pretty stacked at the cornerback position, even in like the slot corner too. Corner. So yeah, don't get cute with Christian Kirk. I'm gonna give him, like, he has been scoring well over the last couple of weeks, not so much in week 1, but or is it week 2? I can't remember. 2 out of his 3 weeks have been really good. I'm going to give him a 2-star. It's more of a desperation flex sort of play, that sort of thing. Let's move on to Matthew Stafford. So far, the Cards, or that would be the Arizona Cardinals, are allowing only 15.6 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. But Kirk Cousins had 25.3 points against the Redbirds in week 2. So I think there's a very good potential for, and dude, I gotta admit, like, Matthew Stafford is probably my favorite quarterback in the league. Yes, I know he's not Kyler Murray, but dude, it's Stafford. Like, he has been for a while now, really. And because of that, maybe I'm a little biased here, but I'm going to give him 4.25 stars. Like, the Cardinals defense ain't all that in a bag of chips. Man, that's a really old statement. That one, I did not write that down, but that's a really old phrase. The Rams running backs, according to turfshowtimes.com, a new one that I came up across this week, McVay expects Darrell Henderson to play against the Cardinals Sunday, with Sony Michel gaining 67 yards on 20 carries last week. It sounds like the Rams could really kind of platoon the workload amongst their running backs in order to give Henderson a lighter workload. And do not forget, folks, and this is maybe speculative narrative here, but the Rams are going to play next Thursday too. So they're going to play this coming Sunday, and then Thursday as well. So maybe they're going to, I think they're going to work Henderson in if they have to, but if they get up big early, or if they get down early big, it's going to be Sony Michel out there, not Henderson, to give Henderson some time to heal. Cooper Kupp, as I said earlier, I said that before we started recording. He is the wide receiver 1 on the year so far. He is outscoring every single running back in half PPR scoring. I'd have told you that this is mildly surprising, but with Stafford out there, I mean, dude, Kupp is getting open, and he has been great. Like, he's really good. I'm only giving 4.25 stars here because the Cards, they can kind of give him some. I didn't say anything about Robert Woods. That's very weird. Woods has not really been all that. I'm in a bag of chips. What a terrible phrase, by the way. I'm sure you loved saying it back in the day. I bet you did. You did, didn't you?
I did. But to be fair, because I'm old and I was
How
a
are we
child.
friends?
I was a child of the 80s.
How are we freaking friends, dude?
I mean, it wasn't like a thing for like ever. It was just like, yeah, it was a thing for a
But
minute.
there was a couple of years, like back in like 2000, it was like all that in a bag of chips. And even then I wanted to like punch people in the face.
Well,
Robert Woods,
but you like to do that a lot, so he doesn't run around punching
I haven't
people
punched someone in the
face.
face in a very long time.
But you run around wanting to. A lot.
Fair
is
enough.
what I was saying.
Don't punch people in the face, folks. It's not good. You shouldn't. Yeah, you shouldn't hit people. It's a real thing. Don't.
Yeah, we were
don't
just
do
kidding.
It.
We were just kidding.
Wanting and doing are two completely different things. Robert Woods, he is the wide receiver 49 of the year. He has not returned value. He was getting drafted before Cooper Kupp and Stafford. And like I said with like in the Cooper Kupp bit right there, Kupp is getting open consistently. I don't know what it is that McVay is doing or Kupp is running or the audibles that Stafford is like, but Stafford and Kupp are like completely in sync. And Robert Woods is just kind of an afterthought in this offense. And so far at least. I'm not saying that this can't turn around and Woods can and Stafford can develop some chemistry through the throughout the season. I mean, like in what was it, 2019? Or was it 2018? Like, or I'm sorry, 2020. Like Kupp started out good, and then Woods kind of came along and ended up being like the better one down the stretch. But yeah, until then, I mean, I'm just gonna give Woods like a flex grade. Like it's. Sorry, I'm trying to be quick here, but he just. I mean, at 8.6 fantasy points per game, like that's flex at best for now until he can prove it. Tyler Higbee, he's in on 90.9 of the team's offensive snaps. Wow. I mean, he's averaging only 7.5 fantasy points per game, but when you're in on just like 90% or more of the team's offensive snaps, eventually targets should be coming your way. So I'm going to give Higbee 3 3/4 stars here. Chris, I believe you have 2 more matchups. Let's burn through them so quickly.
Oh, quickly, yes. Steelers at Packers. Big Ben. Green Bay is giving up the 5th most points to the quarterback position in fantasy.
Weirdly.
However, the 9th least passing yards allowed. Yeah, that's weird. Like the 9th least passing yards, but the 5th most fantasy points. That's due to their leading 9 passing touchdowns they've given up. Mm-hmm. But nobody's dumb enough to play Big Ben at quarterback, so he's on the bench. He's playing awful. Najee, Green Bay gives up the 9th most fantasy points to the running back position and the middle of the road in terms of rushing yards. And really, Najee had a nice fantasy week, but that was thanks to catching 14 of 19 targets for 102 receiving yards. He's still been awful on the ground because the Pittsburgh Steelers have been awful on the ground, as you mentioned earlier in one of your matchups. I think they're last or second to last in rushing yards or something like that. So it's not good in that way, but really Najee is the only one that's in the discussion as far as I'm concerned there, because he'll get the touches, he'll get the attempts on the ground, and he'll get the targets too. So I'm going to give him 3.25 stars.
Seems very fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of concern in this offense. So on to Deontay, who didn't play last week. In his stead, Claypool kind of had a bunch of targets and 9 catches, 15 targets, 9 catches, 96 yards, but no touchdowns. Big Ben has only thrown 3 passing touchdowns through 3 weeks. It's just not a whole lot of production there, but I think if I touched on it earlier that Deontay's is trending in. So based solely on comeback scenario, game script, well, okay, Steelers defense is pretty darn good. We'll get to that in a second. Just based on game script, I think Deontay is going to get a fair amount of targets. Claypool takes a back seat again. Give Deontay a reasonable 3 stars, and I'm just going to go and bench the other 2. I just don't believe in the offensive line of Big Ben enough right now. And no tight end of consequence for the Steelers there. Packers. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers was fine for fantasy and led another last-minute comeback in Week 3 versus the Niners. Both of Rodgers' get-right games have, in the past couple weeks, have come versus suspect secondaries in Detroit and San Francisco. Steelers are giving up a reasonable 2 touchdowns per game, just like Rodgers got this past week. That's kind of what I see here. Enough yardage and a couple of scores putting him as a low-end QB1 for week 4. 3.75 stars for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones, Steelers give up the 3rd fewest points to the running back position and the 10th least amount of yards to backs. That makes no sense. 10th least amount of rushing yards given up. And TJ Watt could be back. I'm sorry, that was an old note. TJ Watt is back. Still, Jones is the straw that stirs the offensive drink, and he should see plenty of opportunity, so I'm going to give him 3.75 stars.
That one's on the bingo board.
What's that?
Nothing. Keep going. Nothing. I didn't say anything.
Devontae Adams. Steelers give it the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers and the 12th most yards in terms of receiving yards. And Adams is coming off an 18-target game. 5 stars for Devontae Adams. Robert Tonyan. I'm sorry, no receivers. Other receivers to mention, I think. Somebody scored last week, but whatever. Robert Tonyan. Targets and snaps are too inconsistent to be anything more than a bad tight end dart throw at this point. I'm going to bench him. That's that matchup. Steelers at Packers.
Let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens at the Denver Broncos. Let's, of course, start with the quarterback position. Much like the Panthers, the Broncos have faced a column of kittens when it comes to opposing quarterbacks. Can you see how much I was in love with my phrase that I came up with there last night? Mm-hmm. Denver has faced the Giants, the Jags, and the Jets. Hey,
wow.
Yeah. One thing I really just realized when I wrote this, and I wasn't doing this earlier, the Panthers and kittens, that wasn't on purpose thing. But so far the Broncos have allowed 50 rushing yards to the quarterback position on the season. Let's expect a little bit more closer to Lamar's average, which is 83.7 rushing yards per game for him. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I'm not expecting the moon from Lamar. He's only completing 60.9% of his passes so far, and the Broncos are allowing just 162.3 passing yards per game and 4 interceptions so far this season. Like I said, it's not exactly the greatest gauge against the teams that he has played. So I'm going to give 3 3/4 stars for Lamar. A lot due to his legs, but there might be an interception or so in there as well. Let's move on to Tyson Williams.
I'm interested.
Let him ride the fantasy pine until he gets a juicy matchup. The Broncos are allowing 59.3 rushing yards per game on the ground, and Williams is only getting 50% of the snaps too. Yeah, and you know what? Half of 59.3 is? That is exactly 2.4515 fantasy points from rushing. No for Tyson Williams. Yes, he gets some work through the air too, but not a lot. Let's go to Marquise Brown here. He'll be going up against the Broncos' vaunted cornerback crew, it's true. They're really good. They're like every single one of them. I'm not sure how to justify starting Brown here, other than he's the wide receiver 12 so far this year in points. But those points he put up against Las Vegas and Kansas City.
The Chiefs, yeah.
He then proceeded to have a clunker against Detroit, people. He had a clunker against Detroit. More or less the entire Ravens had a clunker against the Detroit defense.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give Marquise Brown 3 stars here, just because I don't really know what to do with him. I'm going to mention Sammy Watkins here, and this is why. I'm going to give him 2.5 stars. But is Sammy Watkins quietly the Ravens wide receiver 1? He's in on 85.1% of the team's offensive snaps versus Marquise Brown's 69.8%. They have nearly identical production, except for Brown's 2 touchdowns versus Watkins's 0 touchdowns. If it were a different matchup, my song might be different. And Watson is just more of a deeper league flex play for a guy who probably deserves some more of our attention here. And maybe if you have a bench spot to burn, put Sammy Watkins on it. I hate saying that, but his production has not been bad so far this season, folks. It really hasn't. His targets, receptions, and yardage are very similar to Marquise Brown's. He's out there more. He's out on the field more. So there's potential for even more of those. I'm just saying, folks.
Don't forget,
if you have a bench spot to burn, maybe Sammy Watkins is worth it. And pick him up for free. Don't spend any fab on him. But if he's available, pick him up for free. stash him on your bench for like maybe a week or two, or after this week, and he doesn't do much against the Broncos, pick him up for nothing and stash him on your bench. Mark Andrews, 3 3/4 stars. The Broncos are also good against the tight ends. Like it is, the Broncos defense is so good. It's so good, dude. But Andrews has yet to score a touchdown. So and this is gut call. This is complete gut call, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving him 3 1/4 stars, and I think that Andrews gets a touchdown this week. I really do. I'm sorry, I ran behind and I got a little back on my notes, but I gave Teddy 3 stars. The Baltimore Ravens aren't that good. They've been giving up some points, especially like Derek Carr and everything. My tab went away, so I'm just going to move along to Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams last week. I'm sorry, the Ravens are only giving up 79 rushing yards per game. That's 9th best. These backs are still like splitting their workload, like almost exactly evenly. It's just so boring to keep talking about every week and next week. Here is a list of teams that you are going to get, and I really hope the Arizona Cardinals play the Denver Broncos next week, and then you can have both of them at the same time. But last week, and once again, Melvin Gordon gets a touchdown. So a big old grr for Javonte Williams not getting the work there, and we get the touchdown. I'm giving Melvin Gordon 3 stars, assuming he plays. It sounds like he's going to, but if he doesn't, dude, if he doesn't, it's Javonte Williams. Like all the way. Javonte Williams might pop up to like a 3 3/4 star. But if Melvin Gordon is playing, I'm gonna give Javonte Williams only 2 3/4 stars. It's more or less an avoid if possible. Cortland Sutton, he has PFF's 9th best wide receiver cornerback rated matchup this week. But Sutton's only averaging 9.5 points per game, but the Ravens are allowing 23.4 points per game to opposing wide receivers. With KJ Hamler being the latest Bronco wide receiver to be done for the season, following Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy's done for the season, right? Yes, he is. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Cortland Sutton could see an uptick in targets and usage and everything. He is the snap leader so far, but Tim Patrick. So I'm giving Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton 3 3/4 stars. With Sutton probably getting the lion's share of Marlon Humphrey coverage from the Ravens cornerback position, that should leave Anthony Averett and Tavon Young, who are PFF's 59th and 98th best corners, to cover Tim Patrick. It's potentially a very good matchup for Patrick here. If you don't know the name, he is very quietly the wide receiver 24 so far on this season, half PPR, of course. He's getting almost as many snaps as Sutton, like he's like 4% less. And he has 7 less targets than Sutton, but only 1 less reception. So he's been a little bit more efficient. Patrick has 2 touchdowns versus Sutton's 0, and that's how he's wide receiver 24, and Sutton's like 41 or something. I can't remember. Sutton does have 36 more receiving yards, so it's pretty evenly split other than the touchdowns. So yeah, pick up Tim Patrick if you got room on your bench. Tim Patrick, man. Let's move on to Noah Fant. The Ravens are the 2nd worst against tight ends. They have gone up against, I believe, Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, so there's part of that. But Noah Fant is maybe none of their ilk, but maybe in a tangentially related neighborhood sort of skill. It is only his sophomore season. Third.
I guess his third.
Sophomore season.
Okay.
I think it's his sophomore.
Maybe it's his second. I don't know. I'll look it up.
You look it up. I don't have much time left here. So, but Noah Fant is in on 80.2% of the team snaps, with the 7th best amongst all tight ends in the league. I think he gets a touchdown here too, because like Mark Andrews, who also Noah Fant also doesn't have a touchdown so far this season. So I'm sorry, Fant has 1 touchdown. That is incorrect. Fant has 1 touchdown so far. But I'm going to call for 4 stars for Noah Fant going up against one of the worst tight end defenses so far this year. Chris, I believe you have 1 matchup left to wrap out this increasingly lengthy episode, because we like to screw around and hear ourselves talk.
2021 is Noah Fant's 3rd season.
Yep, I'm seeing it right now. Thank you for having 2 4-letter names, Noah Fant.
Sure thing. Buccaneers at Patriots. Revenge game alert. 5 stars. No, but seriously, the Pats are a stout defense, and I'm sure the one person that has an idea of how to slow Brady down is Belichick. Pats are giving up the 7th fewest points to quarterbacks, 7th fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position, and the 2nd fewest passing yards, and only 3 passing scores on the year. But that was all done versus Tua, Zach Wilson, and Jameis. And again, I'm not betting against Brady. 4.75 stars. That would just upset you.
Is that your actual rating, or is it?
Yeah,
is it
4.75 is my actual rating. The 5 stars was a joke.
Cool.
In my research, in my opinion, I ended up coming full circle, almost back to 5 stars, so I gave him 4.75. Okay. Jones/Fournette/ Giovanni Bernard. No thanks. The snaps are all over the place, and Gio led with a 45% last week. Bench them all.
And then got injured.
I mean, the Pats give up the 9th most rushing yards allowed, but I'm not playing that game with these guys. On to the receivers. Both Godwin and Evans are averaging exactly 8.3 targets per game. Godwin has a yardage edge and scored once on the ground, so that's kind of why Godwin is I can't remember off the top of my head, a few slots ahead of him in fantasy in terms of points, because he scored that 1 touchdown on the ground, and again, slight yardage edge. Again, the New England defense has played bad passing games up to this point, and I think Brady will be on a mission. So both Tampa wide receivers are viable, with Godwin having the safest floor. So I'll give 4 stars to Godwin and 3.25 stars to Evans. Not a lot on Gronk. He's got rib injury and may not go. He's got 2 DNPs to start the week right now. Did I not mention that at the beginning of the show? Don't think I did.
Who's that?
Gronk, 2 DNPs.
Yeah, it sounds like he might not play this week.
Yeah, and so in that case, I'm gonna bench all the Tampa tight ends. I mean, maybe a desperation dart throw. I don't know, deep league. Who they have behind him?
OJ Howard, Cameron Brate.
Yeah, probably Brate's the receiving guy. You know, I'm not touching OJ Howard with a 10-foot pole, so maybe Brate and desperation. But I'm gonna bench him. And
OJ Howard wouldn't touch you with his 10-foot pole.
Gronk
so there
probably isn't going to go. On to the Patriots. This will be short and sweet. We're all still in a holding pattern with the Patriots passing game options, as they are a run-heavy, play-great defense kind of a team. J.J. Taylor could be worth a speculative add in a full PPR deeper league to see if he takes the James White role. Otherwise, Damian Harris is the only name worth discussing, and he is in for a rough day most likely versus this Bucs defense. They're 4th best with only 191 rushing yards allowed through 3 weeks, and he is coming off fresh off a stinker of a performance versus another good defense in New Orleans. Moving forward due to the White injury, moving forward, due to the White injury and the team's scheme, I still like Harris, big picture, but just not for this week due to the game script. A desperate 2.25 stars kind of flex rating for Harris there, and I'm going to bench everybody else.
Yeah,
on the Patriots.
And here's the thing about Harris too,
including the quarterback.
Is that and here's the thing about Harris too, is that like last year, 7 targets. And here's the thing though, so far this year,
he can do
6 targets. I don't think that he's that great.
Do it. I don't think they'll give it to him. I don't think.
I just don't think that.
I think
who's a bigger running back troll, Bill Belichick or Bruce Arians? Exactly.
I gotta
both.
I gotta
they're
go
tied.
Belichick. I gotta go Belichick though.
Okay.
Ever since the who was the guy that came over from Cincinnati?
I think it's actually Bruce Arians, because I think Bruce Arians just hates the idea of a running back.
I'll tell you
I think he's there. He's like, well, I guess you have to use this guy.
Prisoner of the moment, 2021. Yeah, you're right. It's Arians. I still like Harris moving forward. Just coming off a bad week, and we understand he is what he is. He's not going to get the receiving role, even with James White gone.
You know what's great about Damian Harris, and this is actually good for him. Like so far, is that, and I'm just looking at his stats right now, is that so far he has a third of the touches that he did all of last season in 3 games. And he played in 10 last year. So, I mean, I guess that's about on par. But a lot of that he didn't play last year he was injured. So, yeah. Anyways, Chris, is that about the show?
That's all I got. Let's wrap it up.
Let's rappity rap. If you like Josh to try and not do a rap, then
stop him.
just
stop him quick, everybody. Stop.
I'm tired. Leave me alone, man.
Don't ever go there again. Please, for the love of all that is
Josh
holy.
gets very goofy when he's tired. So we have been Amazing Fantasy Football, of course. I am Josh. That guy over there is Chris. If you like this show, you can check us out in podcast format. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can check us out in podcast format, pretty much wherever podcasts are available. You can even check out Jimmy behind your local Quick Trip.
Good old Jimmy boy.
Because he also has our podcast. We don't advocate that you go to Jimmy for your podcast, but if that's where you go for, like, say your what's that big one? This American Life, podcast, and you want to stop by and check out some amazing fantasy football, we greatly encourage that. If you're checking us out in podcast format, we are available on YouTube with the video and everything. We also have a live Sunday stream. In that Sunday stream, we not only do you get the Monday night matchup and the player ratings for that one, but you also get last minute injury news and also lineup questions too. Some asking for a friend. Sometimes Chris likes to try and learn what superheroes alter egos are, secret identities. He's really bad at it, by the way. You'd think that it would be the other way around and have someone to quiz me because I'm good at it, but he doesn't and we don't. And so it's just fun for me to make fun of Chris. Chris, anything else? Did I cover it?
I'd say join the Discord so we can talk fantasy.
Join the Discord. Link in the show notes, of course. And
see you guys on Sunday.
Oh, and like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel too, and leave us a comment too. Leave us some ratings with the podcast, and leave us some comments in the YouTube format too. We
down below.
Well, mainly Chris. Chris likes the comments. I'm pretty antisocial, so I appreciate them, but I don't necessarily care for them. I mean, I like that people are interacting and everything, but
you're a busy man lately.
Yeah. I'm very busy, and of course, I think we need to end the show.
Yep.
Have a good one, everyone. We'll check you on Sunday. Sunday.
Later.
Cue that rollout music.